As the Germans retreated in the east, massive bombing raids began over their cities. Flying at night were the Lancaster bombers of the Royal Air Force. All crews for these dangerous missions were volunteers. Len Halland flew with 617 Squadron.
For those of us who are on tonight, it is either a sober or over-boisterous affair, as we either think about what we might be letting ourselves in for, or purposely try to shrug it off and jolly each other and kid ourselves we aren't thinking about tonight, or that it doesn't exist. During all this time, the ground crew are working like beavers, loading up with petrol and bombs. Just before startup time, the commanding officer would come round to each aircraft and wish good luck to each crew. At last, it's time to get aboard, and the serious business of the day is about to start. First packet of chewing gum in my mouth, and as the prearranged signal is given, I wave for the chocks to be taken away and slowly commence to taxi.
Flight Sergeant Insel was a navigator with 218 Squadron.
Now it was our turn. The engines roared louder and louder. We bumped and rocked, but when my airspeed indicator showed 115 miles per hour, the bumping stopped. And I knew that we were airborne.
On bombing runs, banter between the crews eased the tension.
There's only one way to attack this place, and that's through clouds. Now watch your height. I'm watching everything. Okay. How many searchlights would you call them? Too many, I reckon. By God, I've never seen anything like this before. Neither have I. Should be able to pipe. Keep your eyes peeled. Yeah. They're firing at us now. My God. You light your fag on any of those. 1 minute. Keep on weaving, skipper. Bomb doors open. Bomb doors open. Bombs away. 30. There goes the cookie. And there go the incendiaries.
The RAF set out to obliterate German cities.
Ack and searchlights were in evidence. Never have I seen such a vast mass of fire over the target area. It seemed impossible that any human being could survive in that inferno. Marker flares were dropping continuously, and we dropped our bombs at 0123, which included a full 1,000-pounder, 3 1,000-pounders, and masses of incendiaries.
The burning of the night was remarkable in that I saw not many fires, but one. Set in the darkness was a turbulent dome of bright red fire. I looked down, fascinated but aghast, satisfied yet horrified.
On the 25th of July, 1943, the RAF attacked the city of Hamburg. The concentration of bombing caused a firestorm. The devastation was filmed by local fireman Hans Brunsvik. After the war, this footage was confiscated by the British. Housewife Matilda Wolf Munkeberg.
Shortly before 1 o'clock, the alarm was sounded. We made our way down as the explosions started, much heavier and much more than usual. For 2 hours, the bombing went on, and everywhere you could see the bright flames. People who had escaped their cellars and were walking aimlessly between the flames had phosphor poured onto them. They became living, walking torches. Women gave birth to their children in the streets, caused by the shock of the raids. parents were separated from their children during the mayhem. Words cannot describe the misery and chaos which has befallen this city. Next morning, a thick cloud of smoke over the whole city. The day looked like night. The sun couldn't get through the clouds. Thick grey smoke, air too heavy to breathe, ashes everywhere. The drive through destroyed Hamburg, I think I will never forget it. Mountains of rubble, torn electricity cables, burst water mains, charcoaled corpses of horses and people. This is what the day of judgment must look like. What have they done to you, my beautiful old Hamburg?
Five days of bombing. 42,000 killed. By day, B-17 bombers of the United States 8th Air Force brought even more destruction to Germany. US crews at first flew 25 missions. This was increased to 30, then 35 missions.
There's two more diving through the 94.
3 planes, 9 o'clock, coming around.
The stress began to take its toll on the air crews. A psychiatric interview with a rear gunner on a B-17.
Did you ever see a fellow without a head, Doc? Did you ever see a fella, a friend of yours, without a head? He was flying on my wing. And then I looked at him, and there was no head. Blood was streaming all over the fuselage like someone had spilled a gallon of red paint over it. It was terrible, and I had to keep looking. He was my buddy, my best buddy. He wasn't just a friend, I loved him. I ate with him, I slept with him, we played cards together, we went out with girls together. He was a nice guy. He was a better guy than me, Doc.
In the summer of 1943, Amelie Czech was filmed with these other gypsy boys and girls at their children's home.
We were visited more than once by a man and a woman. They said they came from the Racial Hygiene Institute in Berlin. The woman was called Eva Justin. They both tried to speak to us in our language, in Romani. Mrs. Justin also tried to assess us with a number of tests. For example, we would have to make necklaces out of colored pearls. She always tempted and rewarded us with sweets.
The children were research material for Eva Justin's dissertation. Can gypsies be reformed by living together with Aryans? She made the following conclusion.
The primitive gypsy will never be able to undermine the Aryan culture as the Jewish intelligence has tried to. Nevertheless, a sterilization of all gypsies is highly recommended, as most gypsies tend to have criminal or asocial behavior, which should be culled.
The experiment over, the children could be dispatched to Auschwitz. A receipt for human goods.
12th of May 1944, Camp Administration. Received today from the children's home Holy St. Joseph's Pflege in Mulfingen. 39 gypsy children. 20 boys who were given the registration numbers Z9873 to Z9892 and 19 girls who were given the registration numbers Z10629 to Z10647.
Only 4 of these children survived Auschwitz. The rest were gassed on the 1st of August, 1944. The following month, Eva Justin was awarded her PhD. In the summer of 1944, US Marines were heading for the Marianas in the Central Pacific, part of the long campaign of island hopping towards Japan. The Marines would lead an invasion, starting with an assault on the island of Saipan. Marine Captain Orville Lamotte was there.
A few days after leaving Pearl Harbor, our objective was announced. Saipan, of course. A large number had guessed correctly. Every day was spent in studying maps, operation plans, and attack orders so that each man from private on up knew every phase of the operation. The ship was a beehive of activity.
For 2 years, there had been bloody fighting as Allied forces tried to destroy Japan's cruel and brutal empire in the Far East.
We pray in particular for the President, for our Congress, for all our soldiers, for all who defend us in ships, whether on the seas or in the skies, for all who are suffering the hardships of war.
Troops debarking will get in the inside of the boat.
James A. Donovan of the 2nd Marine Division.
In her long garage-like belly, it was a roaring, stinking inferno. Men, grim and sweaty, packed with all their fighting gear into the odd amphibian buckets with their howling airplane motors. The fumes and noise, the sheer discomfort,